So soil and wine, people often ask, like, what really makes, such a difference in the wines that we make? And for me, we've really come to find, especially in the red wines, the soil signature, if you will, in the wines is often in the textural component of the wine. So that we work in a few key areas of the Willamette Valley. Our winery is located in the Eola Amity Hills, and we work with a number of vineyards in that AVA or appellation. And we also work with vineyards in Ribbon Ridge, about 30 minutes north, and a very different growing area. So Ribbon Ridge is mostly marine sedimentary soil. And so it's very well drained. It warms up a bit earlier in the spring. You see a little bit earlier bud break and earlier growth. Can be occasionally more frost prone because it's a little more precocious area where the vines are growing out earlier in spring where frost can happen. But what we have found is that we really like the sort of almost worsted wool or merino wool, fine but chalky or tannin texture of these marine soils in Ribbon Ridge. And we found that we've actually done more whole cluster fermentation with grapes from those marine soils because the tannin and the structure you might get from whole cluster fermentation actually seems to marry very well and almost complete the tannin that comes, we believe, from the soil in those areas. And so you kind of lay structure on structure and maybe think of it as like the latticing of pie crust on a lovely pie. But you kind of mesh the tannin from the soil and the tannin from the whole cluster fermentation to create a really pleasing textural edge to the wine that's gentle, but substantial and enduring. It helps, again, carry the flavor of the wine to a longer and longer finish. By contrast, in the Eola Amity Hills, primarily the soil types that we work with there are volcanic. And we find that there's, in that sort of clay loam mixture, we tend to get much more of what we would describe as silky or satin-like textures in wine. More acid-driven, less tannin-driven wines, in contrast to Ribbon Ridge and the marine soils. Such that for us, though others do successfully do whole cluster fermentation on the volcanic soils, we've really found that the wines almost show that they're from whole cluster fermentation if we do it on the volcanic soils, that they might draw out more vegetal aspects or things that are, kind of maybe not what we're going for. And sometimes, for example, Vineyard Temperance Hill. So in the Eola Amity Hills, very beautiful old vines we work with from 1983 and make Pinot Noir. And we've done some whole cluster at Temperance Hill, but I really find that when we destem the fruit, tasters will taste those wines and they'll say, wow, whole cluster? And it's like, no, even when you destem the fruit, you get a kind of an airiness and you get an herbaceousness that seems to just be endemic in the terroir of the Eola Hills.